So now it's time for us to have our story. And as I said earlier, this is a story that Jesus told when he lived on earth. Jesus was always very busy healing people, doing miracles, and teaching people about God and God's kingdom, and helping people to understand how much God loved them. And a lot of people in those days couldn't read or write, so the stories that Jesus told were a really great way of helping them to understand. And I love these stories. We call them parables because they help us understand about God and his kingdom. Now, often when we talk about the kingdom that we live in, we mean the country or the land that we live in. And God's kingdom can be hard to understand because it isn't just one place. When Jesus talks about God's kingdom, he means all the people who are following God, listening to Jesus, loving Jesus and living with him. That makes you part of God's kingdom. And Jesus' stories helped us to understand what it's like being in God's kingdom. So, I'm just going to read you from the Bible. I'm using the Good News Bible, a very old one from when I was a little girl. And I'm going to read from Matthew chapter 13. It's ever so short. It's verse 45 and 46, and it's called The Parable of the Pearl. The kingdom of heaven is like this. A man is looking for fine pearls, and when he finds one that is unusually fine, he goes and sells everything he has and buys that pearl. Now, to help us think about this story a little bit more, I'm going to read a longer version to you from this book. So, let's hear the story of the precious pearl. Here is a man who buys and sells things. He is called a merchant. He has a fine fur coat and a felt hat with a floppy feather. That's his favourite hat. The house he lives in is huge. It has 5 floors and a fish pond with a fountain in the front garden. This merchant has everything he wants. He has 15 rooms filled with furniture. He has 4 freezers full of food and 3 fridges for fizzy drinks. And there is more money under his mattress than you can ever imagine. Much more. Yes, this merchant has everything he wants. Until one day, in a shop window, he sees something. He sees something special. It is a wonderful white pearl. It costs £500,000, says the man in the shop. This is even more money than the merchant has under his mattress. But he wants that pearl more than anything in the world. So the merchant hurries home. He has a plan. He sells his furniture, his fridges, and his freezers full of food. He sells his house, his fountain, and his fish pond. He sells his fine fur coat. But the felt hat with the floppy feather he keeps, because that's his favourite hat. He borrows a barrow and he bundles in all the money. Off to the shop he trundles to buy the pearl. Oh no, he is still £6 short. Sell me your hat for £6, says the man in the shop. The merchant laughs. He hands the man his hat and he takes the pearl. Hooray! The pearl is his at last. Jesus says God is like the merchant's pearl. It costs everything to know him, but he is worth more than anything in the world. I wonder if you've heard that story before. Let's do some thinking about the story. I'm going to ask our usual 3 questions. I wonder, what was your favourite part of the story? Why don't you tell each other now? The next thing I wonder is, what do you think is the most important part of that story? Tell each other now. And lastly, if you were in that story, where would you be? Tell each other now. Well done. Good thinking about the story. Remember that God often has things he wants to say to us when we read Bible stories. So remember to keep your ears, your heart and your mind open and see if God is saying anything else to you about that story. We're going to do some listening to God now to give him a chance to talk to us some more.